Nothing in this podcast or on our website should be construed as medical advice. Consult your healthcare provider for your individual nutritional and medical needs. The information presented is based on our research and is strictly that of the author and not necessarily those of any professional group or other individual.
Hi, I'm Sue Becker from Bread Beckers. Welcome to Sue's Healthy Minutes. I'm so excited you've joined me today, and I hope this episode encourages you and allows you to find the answers you have been praying for the health of you and your family. Today on Sue's Healthy Minutes, my guest is Dr. Melinda Mann. Dr. Mann is an Orthodox Jewish OBGYN physician living and working in Brooklyn, New York. She is also board certified in lifestyle medicine. She actually has more educational accomplishments and published works than I could ever even begin to read to all of you listening. But she is currently the medical director at the Birthing Center in New York City. Well, Dr. Mann emailed me a few weeks back to share that she began her journey into freshly milled flour about 4 years ago and was now starting to share this bread with her patients. And now she has some interesting stories to share. And I've not heard these stories yet. So today I'm as excited to hear from Dr. Mann right along with all of you listening. So welcome, Dr. Mann. Thank you for reaching out and taking the time to be my guest on Sue's Healthy Minutes. And why don't we just begin by you telling us a little bit more about yourself, your family, and maybe what even led you down the educational path that you chose.
Thank you, Sue. It's so nice to hear your voice. And I appreciate that you don't mind saying everything over and over and over again to educate all of us about the benefits of freshly milled flour. Here's my story. I've been overweight my whole life. I've been on diets since I was 14 years old. And I managed to stay healthy all these years. But when I got into my 50s, I was told that I had a little plaque in my carotid artery, and my cholesterol went over 200. It was just like 204. Being that both my parents had open heart surgery and both of them were obese, my cardiologist decided it was time to put me on a statin, and I reluctantly agreed to take it, even though I was afraid to. I knew that it would increase my risk of getting type 2 diabetes, and I had already taken care of that a number of years ago by watching my sugar intake, etc. My hemoglobin A1C had gone up to 5.9, and I was very careful, and I had it back in the normal range. But I felt like I had no choice anymore with this little bit of plaque in my carotid arteries. So I started on a lipid-lowering medication called Crestor, and it had a strange effect on me. It made me crave high-fat foods, and I really was very disturbed by that, but I kept taking it. This was back in November 2019. Now, in OBGYN, we have what's called a green journal, where we have all the latest articles to read and catch up on. And in that edition of the journal, there was the advertisement for the annual clinical meeting. And it happened to be that year, the keynote speaker was a Dr. Garth Davis, a bariatric surgeon, and he had written a book called Proteinaholic: How Our Nation's Obsession with Protein, One Macronutrient, is Killing Us. And I was fascinated by that. And I have to tell you, as an Orthodox Jew, I wasn't really going on YouTube very much because people used to say it's dangerous out there, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I do know what you mean.
But I decided I'm going to make an exception. I'm going to Google Dr. Davis, Garth Davis, and see what's going on here. There was no way that I could go to the meeting that year. I was too busy. I Googled him. I saw what he was all about. I downloaded his book onto my Kindle. I stayed up all night reading the book. And then the next day, I just threw everything out, including my Crestor. And I realized I have to fix the way I eat.
Wow.
And there's no other way. And I also started shopping in different stores and looking for what I called crutch or transitional foods to help me get off dairy, and making a commitment to whole grains, and making a commitment to eating beans and nuts and seeds as my primary protein. And then on the Jewish Sabbath, what we call Shabbos, I'll have maybe a little chicken soup at night, and then I'll have a little of our overnight stew with some meat in it on Saturday, late morning time. But essentially, I went plant-based at that time. And the weight started to come off, and I realized that my cholesterol was going down on its own, and I was feeling much better. I used to come home from work at night, like 11 o'clock at night, and eat a piece of chicken. And then I would wake up in the morning, the chicken was still sitting there in my stomach. All that kind of went away. And I realized a lot of health benefits, but I still had one nut to crack, and that is the so-called carb fear. And because I was overweight, I always felt like I had to justify eating bread. And so I began to do more research into bread. Like, isn't there any bread that I could eat that's going to be, that I could say to the world, this is good for me, this is doing good for me, this is helping me, and it's not just dragging me down. And that's when I came across this idea of freshly milled flour. And I also put that together because where I live, there's like a butcher on every block and a health food store on every block. That's how it works here in Brooklyn, and at least in the Orthodox Jewish neighborhoods.
Right.
So you see the link, right?
Yeah.
And I'm doing this research. I came across your work and some other, of your colleagues. And I said, I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to be able to justify eating bread. And no one will be able to say anything to me. And I started milling my own grain and baking and giving it to everyone, sort of like you.
Yeah.
You were giving it out to everybody.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's when I started realizing that I need to do this for my patients. I had already become board certified in lifestyle medicine as a result of Dr. Garth Davis eventually led me to try to figure out, where do I fit in professionally in this lifestyle medicine space? And I realized that I have to be like a regular doctor. And here, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and the corresponding board certification, which is the ABLM, American Board of Lifestyle Medicine. So I studied for around 6 months, and being an OBGYN, I had to review a lot of internal medicine and all of this. I was 60 years old at the time, and thinking to myself, here I am sitting down taking boards with people who are half my age.
It's never too late to learn, though.
Correct. A lot of it I knew, but a lot I didn't know, because there are different pillars of lifestyle medicine. It's not only nutrition, it's physical activity, it's sleep,
Right.
It's stress management, social connection, and avoidance of risky substances. And I do believe they're going to be adding exposure to the outdoors as a seventh pillar one of these days, sometime soon.
Oh, that will be great, because that's so important. Yeah.
So in November of 2020, I took my boards in lifestyle medicine. So all of this was happening kind of all at the same time. And now I look at patient care completely differently, meaning everyone who walks into my office, I have my OBGYN glasses on, and then I have my lifestyle medicine glasses on. And I have identified a lot of patients that I think that can benefit from milling flour. And so I have been trying to introduce that to certain patients, and really, I want it to be universal, as you do, Sue, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It needs to be universal. And a lot of times I go back, I explain in Europe, the towns are around the little rivers and the miller. And, I even go back and I even get biblical, not here to talk biblical, but I say, look at Ruth, the Moabitess. She got pregnant on her wedding night eating leftover grains from the field, right?
Yes.
Right. Or I say to them, look at Abraham, our forefather, that when he wanted to treat the three angels, he produced this sumptuous feast, which was a once in a while occasion, but we're eating these sumptuous feasts on a daily basis, and it's just not good for us. And sometimes the patients look at me, and my own family as well. Sometimes they look at me like, are you for real? But others, they hear it.
Yeah.
But they feel that they have a lot of obstacles to implementation. And so a lot of what I do is helping to overcome these obstacles. And it's quite painstaking at times to help people get on board. A lot of Orthodox Jewish patients do not regularly go on the internet and they don't have a smartphone. So this is like our biggest obstacle right now. But getting back to the story, I'm getting off on a tangent.
No, that's okay. So you mentioned that you're in a community that they're bread bakers. They make bread in the home every week for the Sabbath, right? And you mentioned that there was resistance or obstacles that you're saying. What are some of the obstacles that you're hearing? I was thinking, I don't have time or whatever, or really you think one food's going to help me that much? What do you hear?
Well, it's a few things. First of all, they're used to going to a health food store for a remedy for their problem.
Yeah.
They're very reactive. They're not proactive. They find it hard to believe that this idea of milling flour and getting all the intact vitamins, the minerals, the oils, the protein, etc., the soluble and insoluble fiber, they find it really hard to believe that that's really going to help them. They still think that if they go to the health food store, they're going to get the magic fix, or what Dr. Colin Campbell calls the reductionist theory of health, which is that this one thing is going to do the trick.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of myth busting that needs to be done. So that's one. Another problem is kind of affordability, meaning if you take a household that's already very busy and financially strapped, to ask them to invest $300 to $400 for an electric mill, and they can't see the end of it,
right?
That could be hard for a family to make that purchase at any given time.
Right. Especially if they're not sure. I mean, is this really going to work? Why do I really need to do this? I think that's it too, don't you?
Correct.
Why invest the time and money if really you're telling me bread is going to work? And you said something, go to a health food store and buy the fix. I see this all the time. People will ask, what can I, what's a natural remedy for constipation? Or so you can go to the store and you can get an herb that'll help it, but we got to fix the problem. That's in some ways it's no different than the allopathic, look at it.
Correct.
Yeah. Let's wait a minute, let's not be constipated, or let's not,
exactly,
all the sinus and allergy medication or cholesterol lowering drugs. Yeah.
You're reminding me of a patient that I have right now. It's her 4th pregnancy, and she really wants to deliver in the birthing center. We have a cutoff for anemia. They can't be anemic. It's just the rule here. And she has a problem with chronic anemia when she's pregnant. She's constipated, hypothyroid, and anemic. And I really would love to introduce, and in fact, I was planning on telling her about it today, because all the iron supplements do not work for her. And she comes in to labor and delivery with a hematocrit of like 27, 28%, which puts her at risk if she's going to have any pregnancy, labor and delivery complications. So today I plan on lowering the boom, as we say, and telling her, listen, you have to do this. You have to try milling grains and baking with it. And it's true what you say, that a lot of women bake challah every week in this community. But as you know, they use refined white flour. Yeah. But it's not the same, as you know, as milling and then going straight to baking.
No, it's not. But I do want to say something to you about your patient. Have her listen to this week's episode of Sue's Healthy Minutes. It will greatly encourage her. This girl, extremely anemic, tried all the supplementation under doctor's care, nothing. 6 weeks, I think it was. She started November 1st. And December 24th, her iron levels had come up, her saturation, her everything. It was phenomenal. And she knew it was the bread. So maybe listen to this week's episode.
I think I listened to it myself already, if I'm not mistaken.
Laura, yeah.
Yeah, Laura, right, exactly.
That was pretty amazing. Yeah.
So I have my mill, and I could tell you now about a particular patient that I think was helped very, very much by by the flour.
So are you making bread for them, or you're giving them the flour and they're making the bread?
I give the flour. I don't make bread for anybody. I mean, I make it for my own kids, but
Right.
I also experiment a lot. I'm forever experimenting. A lot of what I also do is farina. Everyone in my family loves farina, and kamut farina
Oh, yeah.
is delicious. So basically, I mill the kamut and then just boil it up.
Yeah. And farina is another name for a cream of wheat type cereal, right? Like a hot cereal.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We kind of skipped your family. Tell me, you mentioned your children. How many children do you have?
So I have 4 boys and 4 girls.
4 boys and 4 girls.
Yeah, 7 are married. I still have one son who's not married yet, and a grandmother many times over.
Yes.
I'm very blessed.
Very good. Very good.
My oldest grandchild is 17, so we're super blessed. Very nice and happy for that.
Yeah, well, I became a great grandmother last year. My first great grandchild was born. My oldest granddaughter is 21. So,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. So, back to the story. So, you have a patient, you were giving her flour.
So, before I gave her flour, when patients come for their first prenatal visit, they get a blood test called a prenatal profile, includes a CBC, a blood count. And lo and behold, her white blood cells came back 25,000. And normal is up to 10,000, let's say. Usually less, but it could be up to 10,000. And I looked at that and I said, it must be a lab error. Let's repeat it. So when she came a couple of weeks later, we repeated it. And her white blood cell count had jumped to 50,000.
Oh, my.
And I said, this is not a lab error. This is real.
Right.
And I sent her to the oncologist. And he diagnosed her with CLL, chronic lymphocytic leukemia. Now, she was completely asymptomatic at the time. And of course, she was in shock. She was around 12 weeks pregnant at the time, and she really wanted to keep the pregnancy. And I said to the oncologist, what do we do for her? And he said to me, nothing. And I said, I can't have her white blood cell count jumping up to who knows where. And then she's going to get started on, I don't know what, during pregnancy. And I made up my mind that we were going to put her on an anti-inflammatory diet and that she is going to have to fix her diet. So I took a very thorough dietary history from her. And it turns out that she was eating bread 3 times a day. And she liked bread, and she was tending to be on the skinny side. So she thought that maybe the bread was helping to keep her weight up. More myths, right?
Yeah. She was eating like the commercially processed bread.
So actually, because she was a baker, a home baker, she was buying this stale whole wheat flour off the shelf.
Okay.
and baking whole wheat rolls for herself with this, what we call the dead flour, the dead whole wheat flour.
Yeah, they're not so tasty.
I said, listen, I want to do something with you unconventional. I want to put you on beans and nuts and seeds and fruits and vegetables. And I'm going to tell you which oil to buy. I'm going to tell you which this to use and which eggs to use and which fish to eat. And there's certain poultry that you can get that is organically raised. We went through the whole thing. Sardines, et cetera, But one thing I really need you to do, if you're going to eat bread 3 times a day, you're going to have to let me mill you the flour, and I'm going to give it to you. And Sue, I want to tell you that her white blood cell count arrested at 50,000, and it stayed 50,000 the entire pregnancy. The baby grew beautifully inside of her, and we were able to carry her to full term. 39 weeks, 1 week before her due date. We induced her, we delivered a healthy baby.
Wow.
She had a slight bump in her white blood cell count around the time of labor, which all women get.
Yeah.
But that bump resolved after she delivered. And I was able to hand her, as a healthy woman with CLL, back to the oncologist after the pregnancy was over.
That is amazing.
And I just felt that without a doubt that her dietary interventions made all the difference.
Yes.
Of course, it's a series of one, and it's an anecdotal case, in my opinion, worthy of publishing. I didn't get around to it yet.
So after delivery, then did she go through cancer treatment? How is she doing today?
After, let's say, her 6-week checkup, she was doing fine. And I referred her back to the oncologist. This particular oncologist left our hospital and went to a different hospital. And I had been in touch with her in the postpartum period. She was having a little more anxiety. And let me add, excuse me, as soon as the baby was born, she stopped taking grain from me. Okay.
Oh,
She stopped
no.
taking milled grain. Yes,
Why?
because that's how people are. That's how they
Yes.
are.
Oh, my
Right?
goodness. Yes.
Yeah. And I continued to recommend it. But because she stopped taking the milled flour from me, I felt for me to like call and check up on her was something of an imposition.
Yeah.
I didn't want to make her feel like I was calling her up to express my dissatisfaction about the decision that she had made to kind of go back to the way she was eating before. So for now, I haven't been in touch with her of late.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to give people space.
Yeah, you have to let them make their own decisions. And while it's baffling to me that anyone would stop after seeing the incredible health improvements, just your quality of life, better. It's always interesting. Or I'll hear people say, oh, I did it when my children were young, but now I quit when they all left home, but now they're coming back around. I'll see them in our store and they'll tell me that. And they're like, yeah, now I have all these health issues. So I think maybe I need to do this again. I'm like, okay, okay. So
Right,
it's never
right.
too late. It's never too late. So what are some other stories and testimonies that you've seen with patients that have embraced the flower?
One of my other kind of remarkable stories was a young woman with PCOS. And you learn that the typical polycystic ovary syndrome, where there's a chronic inability to ovulate and all the metabolic problems that goes along with that. Many of these women are overweight. Some of them are actually thin. So this particular teenager was of normal weight, but almost never had her period. And when she would get it, she would stain for a very long period of time. And in addition to that, she was hirsute. She was literally growing a beard. And the only thing that saved her was that she was a blonde. But if you would look, you would see she was blonde. Her testosterone levels were high. She was completely metabolically deranged, and she was a bit of a stubborn teenager as well. At the same time, she didn't want to go on birth control pills. She didn't want to take medications. And she didn't really want to hear much about diet. So we were kind of stuck.
Wow. Yeah.
And this went on for a while. And she went on to metformin at a certain point, went off the metformin, tried a little bit of dietary modification, also was thinking about doing the high protein, low carb, which of course is not really the ultimate solution for these patients. In any case, I followed her for like 3 or 4 years. Her testosterone levels kept going up to the point where I was just thinking, maybe she's got a tumor on her adrenal glands. So I became kind of worried. I sent her to a regular endocrinologist, and he found nothing. He said, it's PCOS. That's all it is. And then I contacted my local brilliant reproductive endocrinologist, and I sent in the labs. And he said, yeah, let's do an MRI of her adrenal glands. Let's make sure. So we did all this imaging, nothing. It's PCOS. And he said to me, this is the most brittle case of PCOS I have ever seen. And again, we kept kind of buying time and waiting and seeing. And she was still being what I would call the stubborn teenager. But eventually she matured and she became a young lady. And she still kept coming to me twice a year for blood work. And I would kind of try to gently introduce lifestyle ideas to her. And the last time I saw her, I said, listen, it's time to get real. And it's time to do something. And I outlined an entire plan for her, which included freshly milled flour. And I explained all of that to her. I also told her to avoid the endocrine disruptors, which means, of course, avoiding plastics, disposables, hot plastic especially. So we had that whole conversation, personal care products, etc. And she said, you know what? I'm ready to do it. And she didn't have a mill. And I started milling flour for her and sending it to her, and she would bake with it. And lo and behold, she started to see the changes. Her cycles became more normal. I can't say they're really completely normal even at this point. But when she went to get her electrolysis, the woman who had been doing it for years and years said to her, "What are you doing? What is this? Whatever you're doing, keep it up." The hair growth was literally stopping, the hair
Wow.
growth on her face.
The abnormal hair growth. Yeah.
Not only that, I was kind of tracking whether or not she was ovulating, and I was able to document spontaneous ovulation. She's a single girl. She's not interested now in becoming pregnant, but she always wanted to know that she was ovulating.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Right. So we kind of started calculating, and one day I drew a progesterone level on her, and it was proof of ovulation, and she was elated. And she was so elated about all this that she wrote an article for the local magazine. She did it under a pen name, and she started a support group for women with PCOS that don't want to go on birth control pills and all of that. I should also add one more thing. I did put her on one supplement called Ovasitol, which is myo-inositol. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's an insulin sensitizer. So this also helped her, and she was willing to take that. So all of this together really resulted in a tremendous clinical improvement.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, I've studied vitamin E for years and years and years, and I know you've probably heard my stories on vitamin E. And when you were describing PCOS, I was never diagnosed with that, but I'm telling you, I had some pretty strange periods, and like not having them and then have them, and I'd be out for a week or more, and then and so then when I started supplementing with vitamin E, and then years later the bread, I was able to quit my supplementation. And I tell people I could almost set my clock by my monthly cycle. I just knew exactly. It became so normal. And that's just amazing. I mean, I'm just sad that she didn't listen years before. She might could have eliminated a lot of discomfort and misery for a lot of years. So that's an amazing story too. And you know, more than anecdotal. I mean, that you saw and she saw.
Sure.
And others noticed as well.
But she also kind of slacked off on the freshly milled grain when she started to see results.
Yeah. All right. So another story. We have time for another story.
I had a patient many years ago. In fact, she's in her upper 40s now. It must be 25 years ago that she was diagnosed with lymphoma. And she was a young woman then. She was treated with chemo, and she survived. She happened to have a sister who also had cancer. Unfortunately, her sister did not survive. So it's possible, we don't know, environmental, genetic, we don't know. And she was my patient for many years, and then she moved upstate. A lot of people moving upstate nowadays, Sue. I think you can figure out why.
Yeah, maybe so.
Right. All of a sudden, I got a call. I haven't taken care of her in a while, that she felt a lump down below. And we sent her in to get it checked, and it was cancer, vulvar cancer. And her mother, who's a friend of mine, she's like, I have only one daughter left. We have to do something. And can you please help? And I wasn't even her doctor at that time, but I knew that there's something wrong with this woman. Why should she have two cancers 25 years apart? What is going on?
Yeah.
And she was probably eating not a great version of the standard American diet all these years. So we got in touch with Memorial Sloan Kettering. We did everything we were supposed to do. And I said to her, listen, I'm going to tell you what to do. Please listen to me. And you have to fix what you're eating.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I put her on the beans and I put her on the sardines and the fruits and vegetables and some fermented food, et cetera, et cetera. Completely changed around her diet.
Yeah.
She responded to all the treatments. She's completely in remission now. And she actually continued because she realized she's a grandmother herself now.
Yeah.
She's mature enough to realize that she's got to keep going. And she has kept this up until this very day, these dietary modifications.
That's great.
That's,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is great. That is great, man. So what do you think? Looking ahead to the future, what are you thinking?
So what I need to do is scale up. I need to get my community to like, you want to chip in, everyone on the block chip in $20 and buy a mill and share it. And like 1 week, one person will have the mill and everyone will come get grain from that one person, milled flour. And then the next week, like a round robin idea, that there'll be a rotation of who's going to hang on to the mill. This way everyone could chip in a little and get a great benefit. So I'm just trying to work on accessibility and, again, trying to tell people, no, I'm not weird. Yes, it is normal. It's really the way it was supposed to be.
Yeah,
and so,
exactly.
And sometimes I even joke around with people like, did you ever watch the movie The 10 Commandments? Don't you know that Moses was talking to Pharaoh and said, listen, if you want the children of Israel to produce, you've got to open your granaries already.
Yeah.
And there's this whole scene in there where they open the granaries and everyone's rushing to get their grain so they can be healthy and strong and do the work for Pharaoh.
Yeah. And I even think about, the story of Joseph. He goes down to Egypt. There's a famine in the land, and God tells him to store grain. Jacob and his other sons, they're going down to Egypt to buy grain. But then when you see them move to Egypt, when Joseph finds out that his father and all are alive, they have their sheep and their goats and their cattle. So they had food. I guess they had meat, because they put them in Goshen because they were shepherds,
right?
But they didn't have bread, And I just think of the scripture in Isaiah 55 verse 2. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, and your earnings for what does not satisfy? And I'm not saying don't eat meat. I do eat meat. I'm selective with the meat that I eat, or try to be. But grain is the mainstay for me, and I think it's becoming so foreign to people because bread has gotten such a bad rap, because what you're reading out there and hearing out there is being compared to this commercially processed bread in the store, and they're calling that wheat. And so they're saying wheat is bad, wheat is inflammatory, and that's just not the case at all. So yeah, we just have to keep educating people, Dr. Mann.
Right. The main bread that they sell around here in plastic bags,
yeah,
is so pro-inflammatory. It's so unhealthy. And we already know that. I'm preaching to the choir here. Looking forward in terms of a physician, being a physician, when we open this birthing center, the funny thing is that we have a reproductive endocrinologist as one of our board members and one of our founders. His wife had 4 cesareans, and he really wants to promote the unmedicated labor. So I have him now at my disposal to consult with him on reproductive issues. And I realized we're starting to kind of formulate a kind of a research project where he's going to send me, let's say, his failed IVFs, because we don't know why IVFs fail, right? Sometimes we know and sometimes we don't know. And I want to see if I could look at the failed IVFs through my own perspective and see if we could put these women on freshly milled flour and some other interventions and see if we could reduce the number of failed IVFs. So this is like my new project that I'm looking forward to.
All right. Well, I hope that we can stay in touch because I would like to hear some of your findings there. That would be fascinating. So before we close, are there any final thoughts or words of encouragement that you would like to leave our listeners with today? You just feel free to share whatever God has put on your mind.
I just want to express my appreciation to you because you hammer at this incessantly. And that's a character trait that is very valuable. I'm interested to ask you, I never get tired of talking about lifestyle medicine. Do you ever say, again, I'm going to repeat myself over and over. I bet you're still inspired just as much now as you were in the beginning. Is that a true statement?
That is absolutely true. In fact, I'm probably more passionate, if that's possible, than I was 35 years ago when I started, because I really just had my story and then a few others that started coming in. And as I studied and keep finding why bread, real bread made from freshly milled flour, wheat, whatever, these grains and beans, why they're so nutritious and how they could affect someone this way, why they could bring someone's cholesterol down, why they could stabilize blood sugar. And, and like the lady this week, her iron levels, that was debilitating. She couldn't get out of bed, and 6 weeks on bread. And call it anecdotal if you want, but if you do the studies, you can find the reason why. And so the reason why keeps me going. I just see so much sickness like you. I'm sure you see so much more than I do. And you just want to tell people. And it's delicious. It's delicious.
Exactly.
Yeah, like your patient that ate bread 3 times a day. Like, okay, let's fix the bread you're
Right.
But
right.
no, I never get tired. I never get tired of hearing people's stories, their testimonies, because you can't argue with someone's testimony. You just can't. And yes, you can say these things are anecdotal, and I hear that a lot, but you can't argue with it. Something changed it, and dietary, changes, you saw a difference, whereas the medication or whatever didn't bring that about. So I never get tired. So I'm just going to encourage you, don't grow weary. You are in an amazing place and opportunity to help so many people. And I'm just going to pray they'll listen. Pray they'll listen.
Exactly. So I'm actually in the process of writing a book together. I hired a writer. I don't have time to really write. So
yeah.
I'm sending her dictations and all sorts of other kind of notes, etc. And we're planning on putting out a book in the next couple of years with attention to, let's say, acquisition of skills for large families that maybe they need to exist on a budget for them to be able to actualize all of these goals. So it's in the works.
That's going to be great. And, one thing is, yes, there is a monetary investment in a grain mill. The Wonder Mill is the mill that we love and sell. We sell others too, but that's the one we love the most. And it's $319, I think, or $29. I can't remember. And what price tag can you put on that when your health changes so drastically? You can spend more than that on one prescription drug, for maybe not even a month. Worth.
For sure.
All right. Well, we'll close it out. Dr. Mann, thank you so much for reaching out and for taking the time out of your busy life and your day to share what you've learned and experienced firsthand over the years. I know you've seen a lot, and I think it's amazing that you are sharing this bread with your patients and those could use it. It has truly been a blessing to hear these stories. And to all who are listening, don't forget to share your bread with others. Remember, it just might be the answer that they have been praying for. Until next time, this is Sue Becker from Bread Beckers with Sue's Healthy Minutes.
Sue's Healthy Minutes podcast has been a presentation by the Bread Beckers Incorporated, located in Woodstock, Georgia. For more information, store hours, and learning opportunities, visit breadbeckers.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and never miss an episode. Share this with 2 friends who would benefit from this information, and be sure to join us again next week for more of Sue's Healthy Minutes.